Hello and welcome back to the Rekt Capital channel, and welcome to today's video update about Bitcoin and its price relative to the halving. How will the Bitcoin halving affect Bitcoin's price? And of course, this is a topic that I've been covering for a while now. And in fact, in yesterday's video, I spoke about what we could potentially expect from Bitcoin based on its historical price tendencies as it approaches the halving. So if you missed that video, feel free to check it out. But of course, in today's video, we're going to be taking a bit more of a zoomed out perspective, a more macro view on what Bitcoin could be doing going forward. We're going to explore what could potentially happen to Bitcoin should this 7,250 price level become breached. And at the same time, we're going to also talk about how this market cycle, even though it experienced a black swan event, how does it compare relative to the previous market cycles? So without further ado, let's dive right into the video. The best way to describe the market cycle that we enjoyed a few months ago is that this was the ranging period, that period of consolidation before we saw a new bull market. And people may have differing opinions about this, but this, in my opinion, based on market cycles and how we tend to see ranging periods for Bitcoin's price action precede actual bull market run-ups, this entire rally, even though it had a lower high relative to 20,000, this was still a bull market despite everything that happened later, because we tend to see lower highs in previous market cycles and we tend to see 50% retracements after the first initial bull market rally up. So until this point, really, there was nothing out of the ordinary until, of course, we saw that catalyst kick in. So until this point, we saw a lot of inherent price tendencies for Bitcoin actually play out, and it was setting itself up for the perfect repetition of historical price tendencies, of course, until the catalyst truly came into play. So having said that, how does this market cycle look in the context of previous market cycles? Because we've seen a black swan event in this market cycle. Is this entire market cycle really a black swan event if we compare it to previous market cycles? And I'm going to answer this question in the context of the halving. So prior to halving 1, we saw a 660% rally towards the upside from the bottom of the bear market right over here to the pre-halving top right over here. So this was a 660% rally, and then we saw a 50% pre-halving retracement. Prior to halving 2, we saw a 380% rally to the upside from the bottom of the bear market of the ranging period to the top that happened prior to the halving. So this was 383%, followed by a 38% pre-halving retracement. So if we just juxtapose this with what we're seeing right now, we're actually seeing a 340%, roughly speaking, a 340% rally towards the upside from the bottom of this ranging period to the top of this old bull market. So this is 380% towards the upside, which is around half of what we saw prior to halving 1, and around, well, very similar to what we saw prior to halving 2. So you can see how history was very similar in that regard. But if we consider the retrace, it was 38% prior to halving 2, 50% prior to halving 1, and unfortunately this is the sharpest retrace we've ever seen as a result of the catalyst, 72% for the very first time in Bitcoin's history that we've seen such a strong retrace prior to one of Bitcoin's halvings. So while it is one of the sharpest retraces ever, we need to talk about what this wick really meant in the context of this current market cycle. And the question, or at least the answer, is quite simple. It touched the top of the ranging period. So essentially speaking, one way to think about this is that this was a ranging period where we saw bargain hunters buy Bitcoin at a cheaper price, prompt a breakout rally to this level over here, 13,900, a pullback just to test the top of this ranging period as a new support. So it was a previous resistance, but as you can see over here, this was such a strong candle that we never really retested the top of this ranging period as a new support. which is what we're actually doing right now. This is quite interesting because this is a technical sign that you tend to see in breakout patterns. So you see a old resistance get broken past, and then we see a pullback to test that resistance as a new support, and then further trend continuation. So this is interesting to see that we're seeing a technical breakout pattern right over here. So I don't think we're going to see another low. This looks like a very picture perfect play in terms of a beautiful retest of the top of a ranging period. So another major low is definitely possible, something I've been speaking about for weeks now, but this looks like we might not see lower prices than this week. Because not only on a technical level is this looking pretty cool in the sense that we've seen that sort of breakout, pullback, retest, and trend continuation, but also we saw a lot of extreme events coincide together. We saw the outlier black swan event take place. We saw cascading liquidations on BitMEX. We also saw the Plus token scam. All of these extreme events coincided into a strong crash, one of the strongest crashes in Bitcoin's price history, and to just replicate that sort of downside will be very, very difficult. It will be very difficult to replicate that sort of downside, which is why I don't think we will see a new bottom past this level. In fact, I feel like this might have very well been the bottom, just analyzing the psychology and the technicals. But of course, guys, if you want to read a bit more about how the Bitcoin halving affects Bitcoin's price in a more detailed way, feel free to check out the link in the description down below when it comes to my Bitcoin halving article. You can read it on my website if you want to just glean a bit more detail. But now that we've looked at the market cycle and how this market cycle compares to previous market cycles, let's look at how certain rallies, all these different rallies that we've seen in this market cycle, what can we glean from those particular rallies? So this is the ranging period from the bottom of this low right over here. So this is the higher low relative to this low. This low, from this low to over here, this was a 66% rally towards the upside before we saw consolidation, and then another rally towards the upside, 84%, before we saw a retrace, a sharp retrace, before another rally which was 87%, before we saw a retrace again. So what I want you guys to focus on is, if we think about all these different rallies, we've seen almost a 100% rally from the bottom in this current trend, and it's 93.5%. And every time we look at these rallies, we see a retracement once we see a rally of 66 to 87% at a time, because of course these are uninterrupted candles that we're seeing. It's an uninterrupted trend at the moment, and what we need to bear in mind about uninterrupted trends is that we tend to see retracements after a 66 to 87% rally. We see a 94% rally. We're in a 94% rally at the moment. And what I want to also focus on is this, of course, is a consolidation period before we saw further upside, right? But this was the bull market. It's very difficult to just say that this is a new bull market because we haven't really seen a ranging period. We tend to see ranging periods for Bitcoin when it comes to accumulation, and that's why I also feel like we are in store for another major low, which would be that accumulation period, which would be below 7,250. And if we see a pullback even to this green area, that would be the higher low, and that could constitute the accumulation period that we need. But at the same time, something I was talking about in yesterday's video is that consolidation into the halving and after the halving are quite likely. So in fact, we could see maybe even some wicking past this 7,250 level, but at the same time, it would still be a macro accumulation period as we coil in towards the apex of this triangular structure right over here. So those are a few things to think about, because as long as Bitcoin remains under 7,250, and of course, we could see some wicking to around this region, which would be the higher 7,000s, but we'll talk about this in a second. So as long as we're below this level, this could indeed be that accumulation period that we actually need for Bitcoin to accumulate the bargain buyers and accumulate that buy pressure that will allow for coiling, consolidation into the apex of this triangular structure before eventually breaking out from the structure later in the year or even in the beginning of 2021. But let's just assume, for the sake of discourse, for the sake of debate and discussion, that we could see a breakout, a confirmed breakout, because this is what we're watching for. A candle close, a weekly candle close above 7,250 would confirm a breakout to this upper half of the triangle, because essentially speaking, we're in the lower half of the triangle, and this is the upper half, roughly speaking, that we would see Bitcoin enter upon a confirmed break of this 7,250 level. And the top level here, the most it could potentially rally without actually breaking this triangular structure, this macro triangle that we're currently consolidating in on a macro perspective, this top point is 9,300, and I'm going to showcase to you guys the relevance of this level, because if we think about the monthly range, and this might seem like a lot, guys, but it's very simple if we just break it down into 3 key levels, really, because this monthly range is the range that I've been focusing on for the past few months. Of course, until we got that breakdown, it was a very good reference point for price. And as you guys know, who've been tuning in for a while now, this was a chart that I'd show you guys quite often. But the key levels here to bear in mind is 7,770, 8,500 and 9,300, which is confluent with this level over here, right? This is the 9,300 level, which is the top of that triangle. So it's interesting to see how the monthly range will once again become an important reference point for price once we actually break back into it. And to break back into it isn't about breaching 7,250, but it's actually breaching 7,770. This area right over here. And as you guys can remember, this is the area where we actually saw a lot of buy pressure come in October 2019 when the Chinese president publicly endorsed blockchain, and we saw a 40-50% rally towards the upside. So this was a strong support in October, but at the moment we're actually seeing that this could be a strong resistance going forward. So these are the levels that we need to focus on if we see that confirmed trend past 7,250. If we get a weekly close above 7,250, then this level, this area will be a strong resistance area that we'll need to focus on. And then if we breach this, then 8,500 would be quite important to watch out for. And then 9,300, which is the top of this triangle. So in any case, guys, until we breach this level, there's no need to think about the upper triangle. And I can imagine that a lot of traders are trying to time this breakout. Are we going to see a strong rejection? Are we going to see a strong breakout? The best thing to do is just to wait for a confirmed trend, because there's an easier trade on the other end of that confirmation waiting for you. So once we get a confirmed trend, you'll be able to short the rejection once it's confirmed, or even long the breakout once it's confirmed and pulls back into 7,250 to just test it as a support. So it's an easier trade. There's no need to worry about it, but in any case, trading Bitcoin as it approaches the halving shouldn't be the predominant strategy. In fact, being prepared for another major low, should it happen, that would be a very good investing opportunity, and investing is what we should be focusing on as Bitcoin approaches the halving and afterwards, because we tend to see exponential rallies after the halving. And in any case, guys, thank you so much for watching today. That's about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider dropping a like, and of course subscribe for more videos like this in the future. I'm Rekt Capital, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Speak soon.